Hi everyone, it's Rachel back with the Shades of Orange, and today I'm here to do a ranking of my top 15 favorite thriller books. Originally I was going to do a top 10, but when I was compiling this video I realized very quickly that by doing so I would have been skipping over books that I absolutely love and would definitely recommend. Of course, no spoilers for any of these books. I'm always very sensitive to that, so I'm going to keep the synopsis for each book very brief and instead just tell you what I liked about it. I don't have a lot of rules or restrictions for this ranking video. Basically, I'm trying to avoid books that would be classified as traditional mysteries or books that I would include in a horror video, but otherwise I kept my rules pretty open, and you know what, I just really enjoy making these ranking videos, so I'm going to give you one more. This is one that was recommended a lot, so here you go, let's get started. First, at number 15, we have Creep by Jennifer Hillier. This follows a college professor who is having a relationship with one of her students. However, she goes to break it off when her boyfriend becomes her fiancé after asking her to marry him. And so little does she know that the student is not okay with this, and he is a bit of a psychopath and goes on to kidnap her, and things go crazy from there. This is a story I very much enjoy because I love a story that involves an obsessive stalker and a kidnapping narrative. And this one is both fun and also a little bit sexy because you find out that this college professor is a little bit of a sex addict and is really just obsessed. And I thought this book was really fun. I actually would recommend all of Jennifer Hillier's books, but unfortunately, if I'm keeping it to 15, this is the only one that made the list. But I think she is a fantastic storyteller. I especially love her backlist. And this book was honestly quite creepy. It is underhyped, a bit of a hidden gem, and I highly recommend it. Next, at number 14, is Final Girls by Riley Sager. This is his debut novel, which follows a girl who is a survivor of a terrible massacre of a group of young people out at a cabin in the woods. She has formed a friendship with other people who identify as final girls surviving their own slasher massacres. And in the present day, she is trying to move on. She is a baker. She has a great relationship with a partner. And of course, she gets pulled back into her past when one of her other final girls passes away, and then she has to revisit everything and possibly find out what happened. This is a book that's very close to my heart. It was my first Riley Sager book, and I really enjoyed it. Of course, it is a thriller, not a horror, but it really plays into a lot of the horror tropes, the slasher, and a lot of those iconic moments. Of course, with the final girl, I thought that the main character was strong and fierce despite having, of course, this past trauma, and I just have really fond memories of it because of the fact that it was my first Riley Sager. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So I really liked it. I did not see the ending coming and just thought it was a lot of fun. Next, at number 13, we have The Collector by John Fowles. This is a classic thriller that follows a man who is obsessed with butterflies and collects them. One day he sees a beautiful young woman and decides to collect her as well. And the story goes from there as he makes his plan to do so. This is a book that I loved a lot, especially for the time that it was written. In my mind, it is very much the predecessor to so many of the other horror and thriller books that I love and recommend on my channel all the time. This video included. You're going to see some themes recurring, but this one did it before those titles, and I really liked it. The main character is absolutely creepy. We get to read from his perspective, which, if you don't know, is something I really like in my thriller narratives, and I found it to be very unsettling. It's quiet, it's disturbing, and I loved it so much. I did find that certain parts of the narrative didn't work for me, and I think that that is very much the fact that if this book was written in the modern day, it would be edited to have a slightly different narrative. So I think it was a little bit of the fact that I'm comparing it to really modern books, but despite that, the things that worked in this book worked really well for me, and I found it to just be such an unsettling read, one that while it wasn't perfect, I kept thinking about after reading it, and obviously liked it enough to pick up a copy. So highly recommend this one to anyone who is looking to basically read some of the more classic roots of the thriller genre. This book did it first, and when you're reading modern classics, you're going to realize that they actually took a lot of inspiration from this one. Next, at number 12, we have Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. Yes, it's a repeat author, but I do that a few times on this list, but it's always for a really good reason. This book follows a young woman who is down on her luck and in need of money, so she takes on a job as a house sitter at a very fancy apartment building. It seems too good to be true, and well, probably is. This book is very reminiscent of Rosemary's Baby, that classic, and I highly recommend reading that horror classic before picking up this one because I think you'll get the best appreciation for it, because the author is very much aware that his reader is familiar with that narrative and he plays into it. So in some ways it reads like a retelling, but then it goes in different directions, and he actually plays with the fact that you're going to have certain expectations if you have read Rosemary's Baby where you think this book is going to go, and because of that he led me down some different paths, and I was so certain I knew what was happening, and then he completely switched it up. So I would consider this to be his best book from a objective perspective, or at least as objective as I can be, because I feel that it is the best plotted, and he really takes the best inspiration from the best of horror and writes it into a thriller in a way that made his twist predictable but not. And I really love this one. I just thought it was so smart, so well done, and I really do think it's worth your time if you haven't checked it out. Next, at number 11, we have The Memory Wood by Sam Lloyd. This is a story told over two perspectives, one being a precocious young chess player who gets kidnapped and stolen away at a chess competition, and then the other perspective is that of an intelligent young boy who finds her, and he is reluctant to help her escape for certain reasons that you find out, but she tries to form a relationship with him in order to escape, and the story is about their back and forth as she is trying to get out of the situation, trying to find help, trying to contact the police, and it is just such a compelling narrative. Compared to a lot of the other thrillers on this list, this is one of the ones I read more recently, and I just thought that it really holds up. I've become a very picky and cynical reader of the genre. I love thrillers, but if you've watched my channel, you're aware that I probably can be really tough on them. They get a lot of 3 stars, and so when I find one like this that really impresses me, it really sticks in my head. I thought that the narrative was really well done. I normally don't like precocious children, but these ones were just very likable, very compelling, and I don't want to oversell the book, but I did not see some of the twists and turns coming, and that was so satisfying when an author can surprise me, because at this point I feel like a pretty smart thriller reader and I usually can predict what's coming my way, but the author was able to surprise me at a few moments, and that always gets points for me. So highly recommended. I thought it was just well plotted, well executed, and just a really enjoyable read. We are now into the top 10, and we have The Whisper Man by Alex North. This is set 20 years after a serial killer named the Whisper Man has been caught. He was known for abducting children after whispering them away. And the story is set in the present day, where we follow a father and son whose wife has recently passed away and they are trying to have a new start. They have a very difficult relationship. And on top of that, now the young boy begins to hear whispering outside of his window, which means that possibly the Whisper Man is back. This is a thriller I loved for a few reasons. First and foremost was the relationship between the father and son. I really liked that it was difficult and complicated, and the father was not perfect, but he was trying his best, and I thought that it just really rang true. I thought the development between the relationship just really felt authentic. And the other thing I love so much about this book is the fact that while it is a thriller, it leans ever so slightly into the side of horror, which you'll probably notice is a recurring theme on this list. But with my love of horror, I love the idea that there is a possibility of something supernatural, and when you're reading it, you're really not sure which way it's going to go. And of course, I'm not going to say more than that, but I like that teasing. I liked the creepiness of it, the idea of someone whispering away and just going to steal off this boy. definitely a creepy book, a well-plotted book, and one that I just think a lot of people will love. It was a pretty big hit when it came out, but if you haven't read it, it's definitely worth checking out still. Then at number 9, we have False Witness by Karen Slaughter. This follows a woman who works as a successful defense attorney. At the beginning of the book, she is called in to work on a very public rape case, and she finds out that the person involved and being accused is someone that she knows from her past. This is very concerning for her because she and her sister did something as young teenagers that they never told anyone about, and now they are concerned that this person knows and is possibly going to dig things up. This is a book I love so much. I think a lot of you are Karen Slaughter fans, and in my opinion, this is her best. I found this one to be highly compelling. I found the narrative to just be compulsively readable. I needed to know what was going to happen next. Despite the length of this one, it read incredibly fast because I just needed to keep reading. The character work is so well done. I love the relationship between the sisters, which was complicated and again just felt really authentic. I really love when you have these relationships that are not perfect but just feel very real. I do need to give huge content warnings for a lot of dark and difficult subject matter, including sexual assault. And so this book is not going to be for everyone, but if you can handle that, she makes it so worthwhile, and the subject matter is handled very well for what it is. And I gotta say that this book has the best prologue. I have gone on record so many times saying that I really dislike prologues, but this one was so good. Once I read it, I knew this book was going to be for me. I knew it was going to be a favorite, and it did not disappoint. Highly recommend. This is one of her best, my favorite in my opinion of hers, and definitely earned a spot on this list. Then at number 8, we have Dare Me by Megan Abbott. This is a YA thriller, the only young adult book on this list. I almost exclusively read adult, but this book just is a book that I would recommend for all ages despite the marketing. This follows a group of cheerleaders who get a new coach. They become obsessed with her, and we particularly are told the story from the perspective of one girl who gets involved with something with her coach, and the story is just going to spiral from there. I'm really hesitant to give away too much of the plot. In a lot of ways, it reads like a very unconventional thriller, which is probably why I like it so much. And I have to admit that it is very controversial. A lot of people do not like this one, but it completely works for me. And I think that if you're someone who has read a lot of thrillers and are looking for something very different, this one might appeal to you because it really subverts the narrative and it goes to some strange places. It almost feels like a very uneven narrative, and I kind of love it more for its flaws. I think what it does best is really highlight the imperfections of adult life and also the terrible, terrible mean girl status of young adults and just how cutting and dangerous young women can be. And so if you love those themes in books, you might really appreciate this one. I think that of all the books on this ranking list, I really struggled where to place this one because I love it a lot. But in terms of execution, I'm not sure if it's perhaps higher than it should be, but I couldn't place it any lower, so this is where it lands at the number 8 spot. And if you're willing to give it a try, I would personally recommend it. Not for everyone, but it certainly was for me. Then at number 7, we have You by Carolyn Kepnes, which follows a young man working in a bookshop when a beautiful woman comes in and he becomes obsessed with her and decides to stalk her. This book is very popular, so you're probably aware of it, or at least the Netflix TV show, but the story is told in second person perspective where it goes, you did this, you did that, and that narrative choice is very unconventional, but I think it works incredibly well here and just made for a very chilling read because we as the reader feel like Joe is watching us. And the story is also surprisingly funny because Joe has a very snarky sense of humor and it really comes through in the pages. There are tons of pop culture and social media references, and normally I don't enjoy those kind of aspects in a book, but this is just so well done. I had so much fun reading it. It's one I have reread many times. The sequels don't hold up, but the original book is just an absolute blast to read, and I just thought it was so refreshing at the time it came out and just really holds up. Again, I love reading from the perspective of the bad guy, of the stalker, and this one is just both chilling and entertaining at the same time, and definitely one of my all-time favorites. Then at number 6, we have Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. This is a story that is set on the 5th anniversary of a couple, Nick and Amy. Amy has gone missing, and the police begin to suspect that Nick, their husband, was involved. The story is told from two perspectives, one being Nick, who right in the first chapter tells us that he is lying to the police, so he comes across as rather suspicious, rather unlikable. And then we also get the perspective of Amy through her diary, and we get to find out how this couple met and dated and came to get married. And this is a book I love so much because it is such a sharp commentary on marriage and relationships. And despite the fact that this is a thriller and a crazy one at that, I always say that the couple actually remind me of myself and my husband, and I think it's a fact that Gillian Flynn, clearly as a married woman herself, really understands the nuances of those relationships, the good, the bad, and the very ugly, and this book just rang true for me. I am surprised that this book is as low down on this list as it was. Years ago, I would have told you that this is my all-time favorite thriller, but because I have reread many of the books on this list, this one slightly moved down. Not that I love it less, but just there are books that I now love more. And I think it's the fact that this book, while I adore it, it does read as very commercial. It's a reason that it became her blockbuster breakout hit, and it's the fact that it is very accessible. And now that I've read so many more thrillers, I have kind of gotten more of a preference for thrillers that subvert the genre, that are a little bit different. And this one in a way is very traditional, but I read it when it first came out. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I did not see the twist coming, and I absolutely loved it. I think at this point most people know the twist. It kind of gets spoiled everywhere, especially with the movie. But if you haven't read it, if you don't know what you're gonna get, I definitely recommend it. It is an all-time favorite and one I just love and adore. Then at number 5, we have Perfect Days by Rafael Montes. This is a translated thriller that is set in Brazil, where the author is from, and it follows this medical student who becomes obsessed with a young woman, and when she turns down his advances, he decides to kidnap her and take her away. This book is very reminiscent of something like Misery, but I just think it does it in a very fresh way. And they basically go on to have a road trip all around Brazil. And I just love this book because the main character is this obsessive, awkward young man. And unlike someone like Joe from You, which I previously talked about, this main character is very deadpan, and he really plays up perhaps more the traditional psychopath or character with an emotionally stunted personality. And so I think he rings very true. It's very uncomfortable and awkward. And I love that this book, that while it is a thriller, it certainly leans into aspects of horror or has some horrifying, tough, gruesome moments, and it is shocking where it goes. I definitely don't see enough books like this, and I am so glad that it got translated, because I really love to see an author that is just going to push things to the limits, surprise me, and just write such a chilling read. I just feel like books like this just don't come out in English, that there aren't as many North American authors writing stories like this, and I just wish that something else would come out in English by this author, because I adore this book, I adore this author, and I just want more. Then at number 4, we have Midnight Rain by James Newman, and this follows a young boy who is out riding his bike one night when he comes across a terrible, violent act, and after seeing it, he has to decide whether to go to the police or keep it to himself, and the decisions that he makes basically changed the trajectory of his life. And the story is one of a coming of age, or rather a child losing his innocence and becoming a man, whether or not he is ready for that. And this is such a powerful story. It is very dark. There is some serious content warnings in this book, and it is thrilling. I was turning the pages wanting to know what was going to happen. I was worried for the characters. I was just completely invested. It's very emotional. It's dark. There is some beautiful relationship or character work between the main character and his brother, and him and his mother, and I just thought it was all so well done. It was so harrowing, and easily one of my favorite coming of age narratives. And the ending completely held up. So many books disappoint me in the end, but this one was incredible. It had a punchy ending that left me oh so satisfied, and cannot recommend this one enough. I would love to see more people reading it. Then at number 3, we have Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. Yes, she had to make another appearance. And this follows a journalist who has to return back to her hometown in order to investigate a series of murders that are taking place. And the serial killer appears to have a bit of an MO. The teeth of these young girls that are killed are being extracted, and she has to go and figure out what is happening, or at least report on it back to her newspaper back home. In doing so, or coming back home, she is revisiting her family, and she has a very difficult relationship with her mother, and so we are confronted with that. Her mother is not a likable person, and you get to see the nuances of their relationship as they play out. I don't want to give away more of this plot. I love this book so much. It's a book that I've appreciated more and more each time I have read it. It is very uncomfortable, huge content warnings for self-harm and all sorts of other things that I don't even want to get into here. But if you are up for a book that is dark and harrowing and very uncomfortable, this is definitely one to read. It is unlike any other thriller mystery that you're going to read in a lot of ways, and it's a book that definitely had an ending that surprised me. Maybe some other people will figure it out, but at the time I read it, I did not know where it was going, and I was so delighted to be surprised that I thought it was going to go one way and it went a different way. And so if you enjoy a very dark story, if you're a fan of Gillian Flynn and have not gotten to this one, because I think it's her least hyped book, then I would certainly recommend it. It's a reason that it is in my top 3. Then at number 2, we have I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. This follows a boyfriend and girlfriend that are traveling on a cold winter night to go meet the boyfriend's parents. However, the girlfriend is thinking about ending things. This is one you want to go into as blindly as possible because you don't want to have the plot given away. But I've got to say that this is one of the most well-written, well-plotted little thrillers I have ever read. It is short and concise, and it will make you so uneasy, so uncomfortable. It is so creepy, and you will not know what is going on. It will be weird and strange, and it has some of the most iconic scenes that have stuck in my head. I cannot go to Dairy Queen without thinking of this book now, and it's just uncomfortable, but it's so well done. And it's the kind of book that when you get to the end, you will want to go all the way back to the beginning and reread it. I normally don't reread thrillers that often, but this is one that you will benefit from reading again and again like I have, and it just gets better every time, and I just cannot recommend this one enough. One of my all-time favorite books, let alone thrillers, and I would just love to see more people trying it out. It's not for everyone, but oh my goodness, it was right up my alley, and if it clicks for you, which I hope it does, you will absolutely love it. Finally, at the number 1 spot, we have Dark Places by Gillian Flynn. This is a story about a young woman whose family was brutally murdered and massacred when she was a child, and she was responsible for pointing the finger at her brother and accusing him of murdering everyone and sending him to jail. Now as an adult, she is very dysfunctional and is in need of money, so when a group of true crime enthusiasts reach out to her asking her to revisit the case, she reluctantly does so because she really needs the money. Now this is a book that I just adore. I read it years ago and absolutely loved it, and recently reread it and gotta say that it completely held up, and again I almost love it more revisiting it again. This book is told in multiple perspectives, so we get the present day, but also we get the perspective of her deceased mother and her brother when he was a child leading up to the events, and you get to see the pieces as they come together. This book is so well plotted, and it is dark with some fantastic character work, but perhaps the thing I love most about it is the fact that Gillian Flynn is not afraid to write really uncomfortable uncomfortable books with some very strange and unusual subject matter. This book is so disturbing. When I first read it, I almost put the book down at one point and did not finish it, but then I decided to pick it up because I was so intrigued, and I'm really glad I did. But it will certainly make you question what you are reading and why you are reading it, and it's just a book that is going to make you feel very uneasy. And so huge content warnings for basically all the bad stuff. But if you can stomach this book is so rewarding. It is so well done. I absolutely love it. I love all of Gillian Flynn's work, but of her novels, this one is my favorite, and I just cannot recommend it enough. It is dark and disturbing and all the things I love, and I just can't stop gushing about it. So if you somehow have not read this book, please go out and check out a copy and enjoy it for yourself. So that is it. We've made it to the end of the video here, and I would love to know down below of the books I talked about, which ones are you planning on checking out, and let me know what are your favorite thrillers. Maybe do your top 5 in the comments down below. I would love to see how our lists compare, and I really enjoy making these ranking videos, so I have a playlist of some of the other ones I've done on my channel, so if you want even more ranked content from me, definitely go check that out. If you're new to my channel, I do read a lot of thrillers as well as horror, science fiction, and fantasy, so I definitely hope you stick around for more content. You can help me out by giving this video a thumbs up. You can share it around online in spaces like Reddit and Twitter. And if you enjoy my videos, don't forget to hit that notification button so that you never miss a video from me. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.